Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
We are back here with our licensed nurse and friend, Allie Ryan Coaching. That's the name of the company, and Allie Ryan is her name. She's also an LGBTQ mentor, elder advocate, a certified feminist integrated coach, and she's here offering help to those individuals, also parents, groups of people who need to help with stress, burnout, and so much more. Welcome back to the show today here. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm wonderful. How are you today, Jill?
Good. You are the professional badass, as we call her, just to let you know. Yep, she's our parent coach here. I love it. Allie Ryan Coaching. That's ALIRYANCOACHING.com. And I know you founded the company back in 2021, and you're excited to be here once again today. Fill us in a little bit about the work that you do for new timers that are joining us today on the show.
Yeah, I'm happy to share a little bit. So I help busy parents get out of resentment and overwhelm back to feeling joy and in control of their lives. We all have a story of who we are supposed to be and want to be
Uh-huh.
and we, even for my kids, want the very best for them. And yet sometimes there's a huge gap between what society or what was modeled for us versus what we're able to provide. And so I really help parents bridge that gap. What are they aiming for that's actually not realistic versus what they can do, helping them understand, the expectations that they're putting on themselves or on their kids is actually creating so much more pain and discomfort, and help them figure out ways to shift a lot of that mindset and approach their life in a way that is much more realistic and supportive for who they are and what they're doing in the world.
Yep. And tell us where you're based out of specifically.
Yeah, I'm in Denver, Colorado, born and raised here, and it's a beautiful place to raise my kids. So I have stayed.
And how old are your kids, if you don't mind sharing?
I don't mind. I have a 17, 15, and 10-year-old.
Wow. So you definitely have experience in the parenting coaching department.
I do. I do. I've also been divorced, married and divorced twice. And so I really know I have to deal with co-parenting for two different parents. And so really understand what it's like to communicate with having different things in mind, different perspectives. And so just really, so much of what I help people do is learning how to communicate for themselves and advocate for themselves. And that's something I've really had to learn how to do for myself, not only with nursing and building my own career, but even in my own relationships.
Wow. And you are also the owner of the Do I Hate My Kids quiz. People are like, what? Do I hate my kids? Yeah, yeah. You got to go to the website and check that out to find out if you're a resentful parent and maybe what you could just do about it. So for today, I apologize, I didn't get your notes yet. Tell us what your area of focus is.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to talk a little bit about discipline and how maybe there's some opportunity just to look at the way that we have been disciplining our kids and how there's some opportunity to shift that. Because the way that the parenting is going, like our kids are not the same as who we were when we were kids. And so we really need to shift and evolve with our kids instead of staying in the old ages of just punitive punishment. It
Got
doesn't
it.
work.
And by the way, I have them now. So alternative methods beyond traditional discipline and punishment in parenting. Here we are. Yes, thank you. What is the first thing on your list for the agenda today?
Yeah, well, positive reinforcement is the first one that I want to talk about. Just thought we would talk about a few different methods and how they are a little bit more supportive for everyone. So yeah, the first one is positive reinforcement, which is essentially emphasizing and rewarding desirable behavior rather than solely focusing on the undesirable behavior. This includes verbal praise, rewards, privileges for good behavior, but really the focus on what's going right and what gains the kids are making instead of the gap and what is going wrong.
And sometimes there's a lot going wrong.
Sometimes there is.
You taught us a term, at least me, last week about time in.
Yes, yes. So here's the thing that's really interesting. This is where brains are and knowing how they work is so important. We are we are a species that is very focused on surviving, right? So the brain is very focused on surviving. So what that means is that it's going to be looking out in ways to protect us. One of the ways that it wants to protect us is always looking out for all the negatives, because they think if the brain really operates from if we can, surviving is the most important thing. And so oftentimes the only reason that we're so focused on the negative is we think that that's going to protect us. So it's with that in mind, right? Like you said, there's sometimes a lot of things going wrong. At the same time, there can be a lot of things that are also going right. We just have to train our mind to be looking out for those instead of solely the negative things.
I know it's hard. It's hard.
It takes practice. It's a muscle that we really don't have developed at all.
No. And what are some of the things we should be doing?
Well, I mean, just looking for what have the kids done that, it could be a small thing. I know for me, I am such a stickler for keeping the dishes in the dishwasher, not leaving a mess. And so when I notice that my kids do that, even if they put a dirty dish in this dishwasher, that is still better than leaving it in the sink. And it's little things like that, noticing what they're doing instead of just constantly focusing on what they're not doing. It goes really far for a kid's psyche for them to be noticed in a positive way.
So verbal praise, rewards, like are those things we still should be doing for good behavior? Or how do you?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's almost like I want you to think about, Jill, like when you have maybe a boss that comes to you and tells you positive things, how do you feel? How do you feel after that conversation?
When I'm telling them positive things?
No, if say you have a supervisor that comes and tells you all these great things that you did, tell me, how do you feel after that conversation?
Makes me feel good, valued,
Yeah. And what do you want
more
to do?
energetic, excited to do more work.
Yeah. So it's the same with our kids. When we come to them, when we say like, hey, you did such a great job with finishing your homework. You did so good putting your shoes away.
Yeah.
The fact that we notice and we tell them the same thing that you said, that happens for them too. They're like, well, what else can I do to get positive acknowledgement? I would like that.
I like that. You're right. Never thought about it in my, because I'm thinking no one ever positive rewards me. But no, they do. Yeah, I get positive feedback. And you're right. It's been a long time. If my boss is listening, where's my positive feedback?
She'll need some positive feedback. She needs some motivation. It's a little thing that makes a huge difference for us at no matter what age. It's really good for us to know what we're doing right. It helps.
It really does. It does. All right. No, that's a good feeling. You're right. My kids need to be reminded of this. Like my son brought home a project from school last week. It was so cute. And he drew like these NFL football players on the field and he made this whole, and I was like, wow, it was so intricate. He's not the drawer. The 7-year-old is, the 9-year-old isn't. So I actually brought the paperwork to my sister's house to show my father. And in front of him, I was like, look at this amazing art he did, because we never praise his work because he doesn't really like doing work like drawing and stuff. So I brought it there to show them, and I knew that kind of perked him up. You could see it in his face.
Yeah, exactly. I love that you already had an example of that, of like, it does make a difference. And maybe for him, he's like, oh, maybe I am a drawer. Maybe I do.
Yes, maybe I do have this talent. Exactly.
Yeah, that's so fun. So the next one is, yes, the time in. And what this really looks like is, instead of sending our child to time out, kind of probably what happened for us when we were kids, we actually want to think about this in a time in, which is as parents, we are using an approach where we are staying with the kid and helping them regulate their emotions instead of just sending them away to be alone with their emotions. Sends very different messages about what emotions are welcome or not in the home. Can be a tough one, but a really important one to maybe consider.
And people may not even know what time in means. I didn't know about it till last week. Could you just explain that process, what time in means? You sit with them, right? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So let's just to quickly, we know what timeout means, right? A lot of times timeout means go be alone, go take some quiet time. And time in is this opposite, where it's, instead of them going away and having to stop feeling their emotions to basically continue to hang out with the family or be part of everything.
Yep.
It's that those emotions are welcome and we get to be with them while they're working through them. What this requires is the parent to be okay with those big emotions, which is what I help people with, learning how they can be with their kids while they're expressing those big feelings, because we know our kids have them and we have them too. We just don't really show them. and show them that it's okay to have those emotions and really support them while they're feeling them. And the thing that's really interesting is when we accept our kids and we show them that those emotions are welcome and we support them through them, they work through them so much faster, because we're not only sharing and showing they're okay, they're allowed, they're safe to feel those, but that we will accept them. It's very, very, it's very powerful is what I want to say.
Well, I like that approach. I haven't had to use it in a week, thank goodness, but I did remember it and I will next time because that's so much more inclusive. I think that just gives him more accountability, or him, I see, meaning my son, or the other son too, who could get in trouble, but never done that. And the timeouts don't work well at all. They get very angry, frustrated. I'm going to sit with him next time that happens and I'll let you know how that goes for sure.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it's also setting clear expectations and boundaries, right?
Yes. And so this is something that we often want to do before the behavior happens that we don't like, right? We really want to make sure that kids are involved in this process, which means chatting with them before the thing happens, even like before we go to the grocery store. What do we expect from them? What can they expect from us? This helps a kid feel safe. And actually, as parents, this helps us feel safe because what we're doing is we're tapping into our executive function in our brain and we are already deciding how we're going to handle something. This means that when the behavior happens, because they're kids, it probably will, we know exactly how we're going to handle it. And we no longer are going to be, with the grocery store analogy, freaking out, not sure what to do, worried about everyone else judging us if our kid is flailing on the floor, having a tantrum, right? We already know how we're going to handle that. Or if they're grabbing, the gum at the aisle because our kids love, those. And
Yeah.
so being really clear ahead of time of what is going to happen, what's not going to happen, which really, again, safety for everyone because we're planning in advance.
And we got to teach them a little bit about the consequences as well.
Yeah, consequences. So I still think consequences are really important, but it's looking at, instead of there being punitive consequences, having more logical consequences. For example, if your kid chooses not to clean up after themselves, maybe toys, I think that again, setting the clear expectations of, well, then the toys go away because they can't clean them up. It's not, sometimes it's like, well, then they don't get to watch TV. Well, that doesn't really connect for a kid. We need to make sure that the consequences are related to the behavior that they were choosing to do. So if they were choosing not to clean up that toy, okay, well, then they don't get to play with that toy next time. It makes a lot more sense to a child's brain when we do it that way.
And let me ask this, when you work with people, or should I say families,
Yeah.
are you, you're working with the parents, 'cause I mean, you can't really explain these types of things to the children, or do you sit with the family, with the parents and give them the scenario? Like, how does that work? Do you
Yeah,
try to, I
that's
mean, I don't know what age you're working with, but it must be hard to understand like that as a kid. But you try explaining it to them, or have their parent explain it to them, or is that part of your role?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So I actually do work with families where I'm working with both parents sometimes, where to really help them get on the same page of how we're going to be shifting rules and agreements at home, and then including kids in that as well, and helping them explain just how it's going to go a little bit differently. And I think for parents, they're really sometimes afraid of how the kids are going to respond. But what's so interesting is most kids, they really love structure. We love, I mean, even as humans, we love when we know what to expect. And so for kids, oftentimes this shifts the behavior right away because they just need to know what to expect from their parent or from their caregiver. And when they know, oftentimes they want the thing, they want their toy, they want to have those certain privileges. And in their head, they are able to easily put it together. If I do this, I get to keep this thing. If I don't, then I don't get this thing. It really actually works quite well for them. But yes, to answer your question, working with the whole family is actually one of my favorite things to do because we all have a dynamic, right? There's all a dance and a role that we play in a family. And so working with everyone is actually my absolute favorite thing to do because we need buy-in from everyone that they want
Yeah.
to have a little bit more calm in the house. Everyone wants to be a part of that.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much. And just remind us how we can contact you if you don't mind, the email, phone number, website, social media pages before we continue.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me everywhere if you just type in Allie Ryan Coaching, ALIRYAN coaching.com. Also on Instagram, my handle is at underscore Allie underscore Ryan underscore coaching, and that's ALIRYAN.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And also, if you are just reaching out today, you do offer an initial consult, right? Correct? If someone's interested in your services?
Yep, they're typically called consult calls or discovery calls. Because I'm such a fan of connection, like to call them connection calls,
Yep.
where we just hop on the phone. I just hear what's going on for people. And what I really like is for people to know there is no obligation. I just want them to know that they are not alone. I really love people to leave with a couple resources, feeling a little bit more empowered and a little less hopeless, knowing that they have support. And even if they're not ready to move forward with coaching right now, they at least walk away feeling a little bit more inspired about their situation.
Got it. All right. Let's go back to now, topic of the day, alternative methods beyond traditional discipline and punishment in parenting. So where do we leave off? We were at logical
Repair.
consequences, or where was it?
Next one is restorative practices, which is like basically just saying repair. Repair
Mhm.
is a parenting superpower.
Yep.
The thing that's so fun is that we are going to make mistakes. Things are going to go wrong that we're going to look back and be like, that was not what I wanted to happen. That is, oh, I lost my patience. I totally did not handle that the right way. I embrace people being human, which means we embrace repair. It's like this superpower truly that can really enhance any relationship that we have. And this really helps take the pressure off of parents thinking that they need to do things the right way or the perfect way to have the kind of kids that they want. It's not about that. It's more about, can we be there for ourselves when we make mistakes? Just like how can we support our kids to work through things that happen that don't go so well? Repair is just the way to do it. And what that often looks like is having conversations that are really supportive and really about restoring the relationship rather than punishing for wrongdoing. And what this looks like when I say repair, this looks like problem solving, talking together about what went wrong and what can we do differently. This looks like some empathy, remembering that our kids are really often doing their best. They're not trying to ruin our day or trying to make us late for work. They're just a whole human going through their own experiences.
Yeah.
And then collaborate on conflict resolution. And this is something that I work with my clients a lot on, just what I said, the problem solving, the empathy building, and really collaborating on conflict resolution, knowing that like our family's still going to stay together, even if we're annoyed with one another. It's not something that we often even think to talk about, but this is what I think underneath kids can be really scared of, is like, well, what happens if I do something wrong? Knowing that they get to be human and we get to be human and work together through a problem is such an amazing thing to include in your parenting.
Yep. And also that connection-based discipline as well.
Yes, yes. Knowing that throughout anything that there is connection, right? I even call it like connection through conflict. Knowing that even if we're, even like as for even a couple, even if they're having something that they're not getting along with, but knowing that underneath it, they still have each other's back and they still love each other and have positive regard for each other is so important. And so connection-based discipline really looks like prioritizing that connection and empathy through understanding, through addressing those underlying needs with the child's behavior, right? Oftentimes we might see a kid lashing out, or they want to talk, or we think they're ignoring us, but really they're going through their own experiences, maybe something that happened at school, maybe something that we don't, it can be something that feels so minor to us, but for that kid, that's a big deal. And so really
Yeah.
stepping back and, like you said, with that connection in mind, thinking of ways to validate their experience and to collaborate on finding solutions really can be really a game changer for even where you have to do discipline less because there is connection there. And that's oftentimes what we're missing, and kids are missing too, is that feeling of connection and closeness. So they just want attention and they'll get it any way that they can.
Of course they will.
Of course, they know how to get under our skin. They're the best at it.
Yeah, really is. What else is on the agenda?
Yeah, so self-regulation skills, right? And this is really just as much for the parent as for the kid. Our kids, they don't have, their brain is not fully developed, right? So when we talk about emotional regulation and self-regulation, it's mostly for the parent to teach us how to stay calm and connected to ourselves so that when our kids are expressing big emotions, or when we're modeling how to behave, right? That's what we're doing. Whether we know it or not, we're modeling behavior because kids are just like sponges. And so when we are helping them develop emotional intelligence and self-regulation skills, we're teaching them ways to stay calm. We're teaching them ways to stay in their body. And what this does is this empowers children to manage their emotions and their behavior. Whether, it's not like we're sitting and talking about it like that, but when we're showing them how to stay calm and how to stay, grounded while they're working through something, this actually builds the capacity. It's just like building a muscle. They know that they can sit through this discomfort. And so every time that they come back to that, it's just building that muscle a little bit more.
All right, we got to do that and be able to. In our last 5 minutes, we still have to talk more about some other skills and more empathy and understanding as well.
Yeah, empathy is a big one. And I think it's this interesting buzzword. And so I think for me, I just like to bring it solely to just empathy is just understanding what another person might go through, right? And so really sitting back, and I think we can get so busy in the hustle and bustle of life and responsibilities and going to this and going to that, that we're not thinking about what other people might be going through. And so this is really just an invitation to recognize that our children's behavior is often a form of communication. And if we respond with a little bit of empathy and understanding rather than punishment, this will foster the trust. This will foster emotional security and truly create a stronger parent-child bond. And this is what we want, especially when they're kids, because when they get to teenager years, when really we need open doors of communication, really making choices on their own, they need to know that there's that strong emotional connection that's there. And it starts young, right? With those skills of that empathy and understanding.
All right. And it's hard to empathize when you're an angry, upset, frustrated parent, though. But these are some of the skills and tools that you teach parents to work with, right? And yeah, it's better sometimes than punishment. So you say it fosters trust, emotional security, stronger parent-childhood bond with empathy. So can you give us an example, like a role play in a sense? If I'm, the child, you're the parent, and something goes wrong, would you mind just maybe telling, like, let's see, what did I do wrong? How about I got a good one. My son just did this actually. He left his son at they walked out the backyard to go to their friend's house, and he left my son who's 7. He locked the gate on him at the friend's house, and he's too short to get back over to my gate. So my son was locked outside crying, and I reprimanded my son and I yelled at him and I took away his iPad. But again, I didn't sit with him. I didn't do any of the other approaches, but that was something that happened the other day. And I'm like, there's a lake back there. I'm like, your little brother could have drowned. He couldn't get in. If I didn't hear him screaming and crying, how would I have known to go out of the house? So that upset me. So Kelly, role play this. So okay,
sure.
Go ahead.
So,
where do I start?
So where we want to start is with the older son. And what I would say is like, so what was going on that was so exciting that you forgot your older brother or younger brother?
He didn't forget him. I didn't want him to come with me to my friend's house.
Okay, how come?
Because I just want to play with my friend myself. Because you're not cool enough to play with us. You're too little.
Okay.
You're 7. We're 9.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that you probably want some alone time with your friend, and you don't want to always bring your brother with you. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, Mom. Yes.
Okay, all right. Well, listen, we don't always get what we want. Sometimes you're going to have to bring your little brother with you. And maybe what we can work out is that sometimes you get that time with your other friends that are your age. But sometimes I'm going to need you to hang out with your little brother. And when you are with your younger brother, you're going to have to make sure he's taken care of, just like, right? And this is when we bring in the setting clear expectations and boundaries.
Okay.
There are some times when I need you to do this, just like we've talked about. And if you do that, okay, then maybe you're earning some alone time with your friend. What do you think about that?
Well, I like that. I do. I like that idea. But me on your side would say, how could you leave your brother locked out there to maybe fall in the lake? Because that was a dangerous situation. So how do you approach that?
So what I would say is just, we want to be so careful that we're not parenting from fear, right? Which what I'm hearing from you is fear. Your brain went to the worst possible situation. And so as a coach, I would validate you as the parent of like, yes, absolutely. That is really scary. And it didn't happen. So making sure that he knows, listen, your younger brother doesn't necessarily know how to do these skills. If he fell in, maybe he doesn't know how to swim. So really clearly, right, and logically, this is why this matters. He doesn't understand how to maybe protect himself. This is why, right? But also it not being about totally being about fear, because that's your own fear.
Yes.
It didn't happen. Whereas we don't have to really hammer it in, which can be so hard. But really that's more about your own fear.
Okay.
And this is what we often do in coaching, where we talk about the worst possible things that we come up with in our heads that we don't want to happen, that are probably, it's not likely that that's going to happen, but of course our brain gets really attached to it. And this is sort of the difference, is we have to learn how to work through those fearful things in our brain that we're so scared of, but not put that onto our kids.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Thank you for role playing that. That was so fun.
Thank you. And I apologize, we're out of time.
I mean,
How could we reach you? We could do more next time, but thank you for the detailed notes too. Very helpful. And I'm glad I got them. How can we reach out to you, Allie, one more time?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Instagram, Allie_Ryan_coaching. Hop on my website, www.allieryancoaching.com. Ryu, I've got lots of freebies: how to deal with overwhelm, do you actually hate your kid with my quiz, and also how to survive the first 30 days of a breakup with children. Lots of really amazing resources on my website. So hop on and get some.
Will do. Thank you so much for being here. Excited to have you again. Thanks again for a great show.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.